I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. This album that we're going to review today has been out for a couple of months, and we've just been kind of putting it off and kind of listening to it on the side, and then finally we just broke down and we decided this album's good. We have to. We just have to review it. We have to bring Tom and my thoughts to you guys about Cloud Nothing's third studio album. Apparently it's their fourth LP. Whatever the hell that means. Here and nowhere else. Tom, you know, these guys are an indie rock band from Cleveland, but are they really indie? I hear a lot of punk. I hear a lot of punk.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, indie rock is such a catch-all term these days, basically for any rock band that's doing anything that's not on mainstream radio, which, let's face it, covers a lot of ground. So it's not really all that descriptive anymore. You're absolutely right. This is closer to a lot of punk and even some kind of hardcore elements that you would hear. A lot of grunge in there as well, I would say. Now, it's funny because this band's sound to me, especially on Here and Nowhere Else, has really kind of two entities to it, I would say. You've got the very kind of grunge side, kind of 90s alternative vibe, anywhere from Nirvana to Dinosaur Jr. to Sunny Day Real Estate. And then you've got a very classic punk element to it, going back to the Stooges and Black Flag. And a lot of that was just noisy, like 60s, 70s, even early 80s, like Dead Kennedys kind of vibe, those early stages of punk. And you hear a lot of both of those, but I mean, at the same time, it's 2014. Cloud Nothings have kind of modernized it, and they've put their own spin on it. They put their own aggression into that punk mentality, and it's actually something very different than what we hear on their previous album, Attack on Memory. I felt like that album was actually a little bit more experimental, especially with the first couple tracks.
Yes, absolutely.
And this one's a little more straightforward.
Yeah, it's also a little bit more raw. I feel like there's a lot more intensity in a lot of these tracks, specifically on tracks 4 and 5, Just See Fear and Giving Into Seeing. There's some really big builds in those tracks, and by the end of it, like, the vocalist is screaming. It sounds a lot like Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
It's a different experience, I think. I think all around, I feel like Here and Nowhere Else is just a bit more of an aggressive record. Now, it's still in the same vein as Cloud Nothing's previous works.
Yeah.
It's still a short record. This comes in at 31.5 minutes. It's still 8 tracks long. You know, you get through it pretty fast, but the thing is that all of these songs have a pretty upbeat tempo.
Yeah.
They're fast-paced tracks, and then they just lead in one right after another, right after another. The average track length on here is probably around 3.5 minutes, with the exception being track 7, Pattern Walks, which is a great expansive track that kind of builds at the end. I love that track. 7 minutes and 23 seconds for it, too. It's the only long track on this record. But really, I think this album does a really good job of representing everything that Cloud Nothings has done to date, and really just shoring up a lot of those weaknesses that have kind of eked out in the past. Now,
for sure.
Now, this album isn't perfect, though. There's definitely a few things on here that I found, you know, tossing around in my head, going, "Yeah, I wish they would have done this better." One of those things is production. I feel like it is just a muddled mess in the EQ, right? It's the mixing.
Very much so, yeah.
It is just not there, and I get that that's probably what they were going for, but the thing is that they made this so energetic and so tight sounding that I think that they would have benefited from having a bit more pristine production. If they would have had more clarity in the different guitars, and especially in the bass and the drum cymbals, I think it would have come out. Now, I actually think that the vocals are right where they need to be. Kind of I hate it when bands of really any sort, unless it's the focus, put the vocals right up front. And I like the vocals to be evenly mixed in. And I think that they are here, and I think that it allows for that dynamic when the vocalist like wants to get loud and raspy and kind of almost yelling at times. It allows for that dynamic, you know, emotiveness to come out. And I hear that a lot on this record.
Yeah, and that's the side of it that's a little more akin to the classic punk.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
With the production, that raw energy, you know. But then the songwriting has a much more modern spin on it. Now, I would say though that this is what makes Cloud Nothings Cloud Nothings, and it's really what I love about them is the fact that they go all out. Like, they're not doing this half-assed. I feel like if you're gonna put a punk aspect to your sound, you know, into the mix at all, just go all out with it. Now, given, you're right, the production could be a little bit better, but I hate hearing bands that sound like they want to be punk but aren't ballsy enough to do it. One band I'm thinking of in particular, that they're not even a bad band, and some people probably like them for this reason, but Waves.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some similarities in sound. Yeah, they flirt with it, but they don't go all out. Cloud Nothings goes all out, and that's what I like to hear. Another thing that's worth pointing out is I found that when I was listening to this album, as much as the guitar is trashy and just going all over the place, what I was really focusing in on was the drums.
Yeah.
I love the drums on this album, and people have a tendency to give punk drumming a lot of crap, but man, it is hard. Like, if you've tried to make music at all and tried to play the drums, those upbeat, offbeat, fast-paced drum parts and punk songs. Yeah, there you go.
I played Rock Band. I always failed those.
Try to play one of those songs in Rock Band. You will fail.
Yeah.
It's tough. You listen to what bands like Minor Threat and Bad Brains and Black Flag, listen to their drummers. They are machines. They're animals. And people give it a lot of crap because it's a lot of repetition, but that's just the nature of the songwriting. It really takes a lot of talent to play parts like that. And that's what I was picking up on this album.
Yes. I think that overall, Cloud Nothings, Here and Nowhere Else, while I think another thing I had a problem with was the scope of this record really isn't great. Cloud Nothings aren't setting out to make the best record ever. They're not making a huge concept record, but what they did do on this record that I give them a lot of respect for is just writing really damn good songs.
Yeah.
I find every one of these tracks to be enjoyable. Tom, you and I picked a number of tracks each, and you know, whenever we see that, you know, you and I are both picking a number of tracks and they're not always the same track, it's usually a sign that there's a lot of really good songwriting going on and that the album has a relative sense of consistency. And I'd say that this is a very consistent record from start to finish. The upbeat energy allows for a very fluid listen. The songs just kind of lead right into another, which I really like. I think that this is a good album. You can put it on and really enjoy it. There's a lot of cool melodies that come out in the guitar, and even in the vocals at times, that just make this a really good listen. The songwriting being tight, how they're willing to be a little bit experimental and play with their dynamics a bit. I just found this to be kind of addicted. The more I listen to this album, the more I like it, and I've settled on 82 for a score.
I'm going 79.
Okay, so that puts this at 81 for us, which is the mark of a good album that we would recommend to you guys. If you have not checked out Here and Nowhere Else by Cloud Nothings, please go do so. It's a short record. You can get through it real quick and probably listen to it a few times because we're betting you're going to like it. Tell us your thoughts at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what records you'd like to see Tom and I review on this channel. I'm Jay.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIM TV, moving music critique forward.